Welcome into the Barbecue Live podcast. I'm your host, Kurt Mueller. As always, we are powered by Hound Hogs, BBQ Supply. Zach and Blake do a great job of taking care of me and other folks on the competition trail. Check them out on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Hound Hogs BBQ Supply. All right, so I welcome in today Big Perm with Zilla's Pit Barbecue. He's the pitmaster of Zilla's Pit Barbecue based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And I got to give a nod to a mutual friend of ours, Matt Osman with Blinky's Offset Barbecue. He's the one that connected us. So thank you, Matt, for that. Big Perm, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I know before we started recording, you were chatting about how busy things are picking up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. It's festival season. You know, it's food truck season. All the above. Weather's turned nicer. So anyway, before we dive into that, let's hear about your journey into barbecue.
Okay, my journey's very unique. So, would you want the long or the short version?
Let's go long version. Why not?
Okay. Long version is I was born on a pretty substantial farm in West Tennessee. I formed maybe since 5 years ago. No, excuse me, 10 years ago. It's about a century-old farm. My family's just known for hosting events at church. So being a country boy, church is an all Sunday thing. Morning service, afternoon service, and sometimes night service as well. So a lot of the ladies of the church used to get together and cook food in the back of the church in the kitchen. And a lot of the gentlemen just went outside and, in between services, they cooked food. So that was my basic first introductory into cooking, especially barbecue wise. As far as the competition circuit and me doing it up to date, it started in 2014. I started doing competition barbecue just as a hobby. I won my actual first competition in the rib category. My wife got really ecstatic at the time, and I was like, it was something great to do. But I kind of get bit by the bug. So the next couple of competitions we won, which was great. My wife like, hey, if we win in competitions and people like our food that much, let's just go ahead and try the catering circuit. So we ended up doing some catering. Had some really great reviews, great recommendations. A lot of people really requested us, which was awesome. But it got to the point to where my catering paid me more than my regular job at the time.
Right.
And my regular job at the time, I was doing pretty good. I was an electronic engineer and do low voltage work in the state homes. So I wasn't making pennies on the dollar. I was doing okay. So it got to the point to where Monday through Friday, I was working, but then like once Thursday started to come around, I was trying to think, I'm like, am I going to do a competition? Am I going to do some catering? What's going to be my next step? So I ended up coming up with you know what? Since we're doing this catering thing, let's see how far we can take it. So after I started doing my last competition in 2015, 2017, I said, you know what, let's try this catering thing out full term and see where it leads us. So we did maybe a total of 15 to 20 caterings. That pretty much started up the GoFundMe for my trailer. I had two amazing people that made massive donations because they saw the heart that we put in our food. We just don't cook food just for the sake of cooking food. We cook food because we liked the barbecue that was out there, but we just wasn't happy with the overall experience. We felt like we had something to bring to the table as well. It's not us speaking ill on anybody's barbecue because everybody has different barbecue. I don't say good, better, or best. I just say different because even in judging, even if you're doing competition, everyone's food is different, as we know. It's just a matter of whose food they like best that day.
Right. Yep.
So I pretty much looked at it as like, okay, I know I have something different to offer to the public. If it takes me somewhere, great. If not, I know where my ceiling is at that point in my career. So I know where I need to work at. We started with a little 4x8 utility trailer. We did a lot of guerrilla pop-ups. Man, we was at it for a good 5 years before we really just got traction and took off. So we had the following, but a lot of people were like, man, dude, you really need to just like get in a food trailer and then work your way into a brick and mortar. Because right now at this point in our career, everybody asking like, "Hey, when are you gonna get in the brick and mortar?" Which is great, but I'm not the person to put myself or the cart ahead of the horse and then try to really just play catch up and you're at a cat's frantic pace, just trying to make sure everything's operational. I like stuff to be in line and know where we are as far as growth. Incremental growth is best for me.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, there's a lot of case studies where, companies have grown too big too fast and, they lose quality and then ultimately start to slip in other areas and some of them cease to exist. So, yeah, I think you're right on the money there. That's something that personally, I struggle with because I tend to be either pedal to the metal or sleeping. So I don't really know third or fourth gear. Um, but yeah, it's a struggle there. So, one thing I'm curious when you mindset, right? I love chatting about mindset and understanding, someone's attitude, someone's mindset when they made that switch from the comfortable, salaried position,
Mhm.
knowing what you're getting every single, month, every 2 weeks, whatever, to not knowing, right? What was that mindset like when you said, "All right, we got something special here, let's go for it"?
My mindset was, even though I was one of the leads to my company, my mindset was I didn't own the company and they could release me at any time and they choose to.
Right.
When you own your own business, you're responsible for, at the end of the day, everything lands at your feet, basically. So whether you produce that week, whether it's a great week or not, did you do enough advertisement or not, was the food up to par or not, it's on you. So
Right.
I'd rather take that chance and say, hey, did I do enough this week to make sure that I set myself up to be successful, or would I rely on somebody else? And even if they didn't do enough to be successful, I can be cut at any moment, and it has nothing to do with me.
That's exactly right. You hit the nail right on the head there. I agree. I like having that control. Yes, it creates more stress, some more anxiety, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, and you have to take that responsibility and accountability. So, let's talk about Zilla's Pit Barbecue. How would you describe your barbecue?
Um, it's a mixture of West Tennessee and Middle Tennessee barbecue. I was raised in both locations. Like I said previously, I raised on my family farm until 1982. I'm an old head. I was born in '77. So I was born in '77. My mom ended up coming to Nashville, going to college, Tennessee State in '82. So it's a mixture of both styles. Um, Basically, I hung around my dad a lot around the grill. And my dad's the one that really taught me the nuances of a grill. And then it slowly transitioned into a smoker. It taught me hot, the indirect and direct sides of the grill, about temp, we didn't have thermometers back in our time when we used to cook and slow cook and grill and stuff. We did that by touch. Everything, you put your hand over the grate, you put your hands over the indirect side to kind of get a feel of how long will it take for you to cook a certain item. Because it was at a point, and a lot of people know the story about me. Before barbecue was so prevalent in the nation, we cooked barbecue for Monday through Friday. So if it was a football game going on Saturday, my dad or my uncle, they'll buy enough food for them to have lunch throughout the rest of the week. So they'll start cooking food, maybe first and second quarter, especially when University of Tennessee was really popular then, when Peyton Manning and all those guys was in their heyday. So around the third quarter, they'll be 3 quarters full. So it was my job at like 16, 17 years old to man the grill or man the smoker, and make sure that, I didn't mess up anybody's food. People will have to take that for their lunch for the remainder of the week. So it brought a sense of like, hey, you have to make sure that you cook this and don't mess this up, because regardless whether you mess it up or not, that's all I got left to eat.
That's exactly right. So you learned on a sounds like you learned on a direct heat style of cooker, like a charcoal type grill, and then it sounds like that transitioned over to more of an indirect smoker. So what's your setup now? I mean, what kind of cooker do you have? How does that describe that for us?
So right now we're working on the offset. I say it's about a 300-gallon offset. It's located on the back of our trailer, our concessions trailer, and we're smoking I say close to Texas style as possible. I don't like to say specific regions because I don't make my brisket every way everybody in Texas will make their brisket. I call my brisket a Tennessee brisket because I've only been to Texas once. And I can't say my brisket is a Texas style brisket if I've never been there. And the one time I've been there, it was for a family reunion. So I didn't do a lot of, barbecue joint hopping and making sure I'm like, hey, this is pretty close to the way I prepare my food. I'm like, nah, I haven't made that pilgrimage yet. Do I want to make that pilgrimage? Sure, absolutely. And I don't want to stake it on like I'm making this pilgrimage to compare how my stuff stands up to the people in one specific region. I want to say, okay, I'm doing this for the love of barbecue, and I want to see, okay, how am I cooking my food compared to other individuals in other regions, and not specifically Texas, whether it be Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, California, Chicago, or anywhere else, because I cook rib tips like people in Chicago. A lot of people say I cook brisket similar to a lot of people in Texas because they said, hey, this is some of the best brisket I had out of Texas. And I'm like, that's great. But hey, I make a Tennessee brisket. So if Tennessee and Texas are cousins, that's great.
Yeah.
As far as like pulled pork, everybody said my pulled pork reminds them of Memphis style. And I'm like, that's great because I stayed less than an hour away from Memphis. So I don't want to say a hodgepodge. It's more or less like, how people only had certain spices at a certain time frame, so they was only capable of cooking a certain way. So we have access to a limited number of spices. So you can create any dish you choose. My thing is I want to create the best dish that I'm capable of producing on a consistent basis from first plate to last plate for the customer. So if I know I can do that, I'm doing my job.
That's exactly right. So do you make your own rubs and sauces at this
Yes,
point?
I do. Yes.
And it sounds like those are probably a hodgepodge, just like your different styles of cooking, which I think is a good point because I think we get caught up so much in what's the best type of barbecue and people getting all these arguments and debates. And really, at the end of the day, great barbecue is great barbecue. I don't care what it's called. It's
right.
If it's great, it's great.
Absolutely.
Now, what are you guys known for though? Is it brisket? Is it ribs? Is it pulled pork? I mean, what's your calling card?
Our calling card is our brisket.
That's the brisket.
Then after that, it's our pulled pork, pork ribs, then chicken. So a lot of people like they come to us like, and then also one of our calling cards are our sides. We have a brisket macaroni and cheese. So we have macaroni and cheese infused in our brisket, and it's like, man, we can't keep enough of it on the tray. Our baked beans are signature. A lot of cats said, man, they signature to like cats make in Chicago or other regions of the U.S. And I'm like, that's great, but that's something that I learned on my own. And then I want to make sure I bring something to our community and say, hey, this reminds me, because Nashville is becoming a destination city. I want somebody to say, hey, this reminds me of home. This reminds me of a way that one of my relatives would cook it. Are you from this location? I'm like, no, but this is the way I prep it. And this is the type of foods that I like and my family like as well. I have a huge family. I have a family throughout the U.S. So the styles that they've learned, they've brought back to the country and they share with us. And they shown us like, hey, it's more than one way to prepare cuisine. It's just the way that's in that specific area. That's what we're accustomed to.
So, what are you guys seeing in the Nashville area when it comes to just the barbecue industry as a whole? And what I'm asking really is, in the Augusta, Georgia area, it's relatively, we're a smaller major city. I mean, it's not like an Atlanta or Nashville. But it seems to me like locally that we're losing some of the barbecue restaurants. They're either just, maybe the founder passed away and there's no one there to take over the business, or maybe their quality has slipped to the point where people just don't go there anymore. But I'm curious to hear, like in Nashville, because you mentioned it is a destination city, so it's kind of like a melting pot almost of people, right? Do you feel like the barbecue industry there is thriving? Do you feel like it's stagnant, or what's the state of barbecue in Nashville right now, in your opinion?
By being a destination city, thriving, that's kind of like a difficult thing to really gauge because you got so many people coming here. They come here for different cuisines. And
Right.
you can put a barbecue joint up if you put it up at the right location. As long as there's enough people there, you can stay in business. The one thing that taught me was during COVID period, it shows you who's willing to put the rubber to the road and actually do the work. Because a lot of businesses close up because of that, because of lack of business, because of lack of being able to say, okay, I need to pivot and not use the traditional way of doing business to make sure I make myself sustainable through whatever is going on. And it shows you like people that were overly staffed, they didn't survive. People that use a lot of product that are accustomed to people coming in through the door, they didn't survive. The people that knew how to scale back on not only personnel, but scale back on the way they do business and kind of get to the meat and potatoes of everything. It showed you the people that knew how to be in business. But it also showed you the people like, okay, the people that are in business, they got to know what they're doing as far as putting out a superior product. You can't put out a product just to say, hey, it's good and still be in business. That's not going to work.
Yeah. You're exactly right. So how did you guys, so you mentioned the word pivot. I know that's a buzzword right now. It gets used a lot. It got used a lot 3 years ago when COVID hit.
Mhm.
What did you guys do to pivot and put as you said, put the rubber to the road? What was that like?
Well, like that year was our best year because it allowed us to say, you know what? If you can't come to us, if we're going to be at a farmer's market or wherever we're going to be, we're going to come to you. So what we ended up doing was instead of just going to different places where we know individuals gathered, we went to them. We went to HOAs, we went to apartment complexes, we went to individuals that say, hey, you know what? We need some different food in our area. We're tired of whatever is in our area. Could you come to our area and cater to us? And we're like, absolutely. And we had some of the largest turnouts that we ever had. Number one, because people wanted to get outside. And then number two, they was tired of cooking for their family. A lot of people like, you know what, I'm out here working and then I got to come home. And this, that was the most time their kids was at the house. They're like, I'm tired of cooking for these kids, man.
Yeah.
And then it's always like they want something to eat. And then from my experience, barbecue it was never a high cuisine food. It was a food that basically, people that worked out in the fields, they took a sandwich with them on their way to work. They had something to sustain them for long periods of time until they can get home and get supper. So if you get a kid a barbecue sandwich at noon, a nice sized barbecue sandwich should sustain them to about 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon until it's almost time for dinner. So you don't have to keep on feeding them snacks and all the kind of stuff that gets expensive. And you're trying to get them something to hold them until it's time for them to prepare them the dinner, get them ready to go to bed. And that was the whole purpose of us doing that.
Man, that's a great point. I mean, you you touched on something I think a lot of people missed during COVID, and that is, A, you got to be able to pivot, and B, you got to be willing to go to the people and understand their mentality. Which it sounds like you had a really good finger on the pulse there when that all transpired, and you were able to pivot pretty quickly, and not only survive, but it sounds like you thrived when a lot of
Absolutely.
places were just simply going out of business altogether. I mean that
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a really good point, and I think it's great for our listeners to understand that, especially those that are trying to make this transition, myself included. I mean, I feel like as I'm listening to you speak, I feel like I'm in your position where you were, maybe 5-6 years ago, where I'm trying to decide, okay, well, is this going to be a full time thing, or what are we doing basically, right? What are we going to do here? So it's very interesting to hear you speak about that. Now, as far as your uh, successes, right? So clearly, you've set the bar very high in the Nashville area for your barbecue. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And that's not knocking anybody else. You take a lot
Mm,
of pride. You take a lot of pride. You put a lot of love, so to speak, into your barbecue, and a lot of
yes.
care into it. What were some of the challenges though, right? What were some of those moments when you were like, "Man, what am I doing?" Let's talk about some of those challenges.
So my biggest challenge was um, even after a lot of the accolades that we been able to be presented, for me to reintroduce myself on a consistent basis.
Mhm.
A lot of individuals like, man, your barbecue is really good. How come? And to this day, I almost got a hang up about that as well. They're like, how do I not know about you?
Mhm.
Why do I know about you? And then my main thing is, I'm like, I wholeheartedly cannot tell you. We've been on numerous publications as far as press. We've been in numerous television shows. It's just a matter of where you get your information from. So to keep yourself relevant and to be in a mindset of everyone doesn't know who you are, you still have to continue to prove yourself each and every time you go out. No matter what. If you have that mindset, you can be successful because it's over a million to two, maybe even 3 million people in Nashville now.
Right.
So you have to introduce yourself every single time. You can't get hung up on how they don't know me. I done the work. I'm sitting in this location. Well, a lot of people know me from social media, but a lot of people locally may not know me. So my main thing is I have to give them something to say, okay, man, I don't know why I didn't hear from you earlier or didn't know about you sooner, but I got to make sure I spread the word and tell them, like, hey, there are other options out here other than the brick and mortars that we're accustomed to.
So you've mentioned brick and mortar a couple of times, and I know this is on the minds of a lot of listeners who have their own catering business or food truck, or maybe they're competing only and they want to make that transition. What is it about the, and this is something that I struggle with, is, brick and mortar versus being mobile. Do you feel like in order for, you to have some long-term success and really cement a legacy, do you feel like you need the brick and mortar? Or do you feel like you can continue to build your brand and your legacy with your current setup?
The brand with the current setup, yes, because it allowed me to go to different locations to where the brick and mortar couldn't take me.
Right.
If I go in the surrounding counties and let people know who I am, so in the time that they come to Nashville, they're like, "Hey, I can come shop and do business with him if I have a brick and mortar in Nashville."
Right.
That the one setback is people ask like, "Hey, the food is great. Where can I get it on a consistent basis?" And you don't want people to It's great when people do migrate and follow you like that because you have a following that's willing to like, hey, you know what? If he's gonna be over here, that's where I'm gonna be. I'm gonna carve out a certain time of my day or my calendar to make sure I support this individual. But you also want to be centralized. When it comes to me, as far as a brick and mortar, considering a brick and mortar,
Yeah.
I need to be centralized. Or I need it to be at a location to where I can be community based. Because not only do I want my business to impact my family directly, I want to make sure I impact the community around me because it does no one any good for me to continuously sell barbecue to people, make them happy in that facet, but not put back into community any other kind of way. That's one of the ways that I've initially got introduced into barbecue.
Right.
When I was playing Little League football, my Little League football team was sponsored by a barbecue place when I played.
Mhm.
So it shows me like, hey, even though the coach may not have money for uniforms and stuff, they was able to contribute and give back to the community and give them money for uniforms, and they sponsored the teams. So in just that one little small facet, that's one of the many ways that you can help the community out, no matter however or wherever you're located.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I think, barbecue as a whole is all about the people, right? It's all about
Yes.
people. It's about breaking bread, building relationships. And I love what you said about, community. I think, oftentimes that gets lost in all of this. You want to grow, grow, grow and build your brand and get out there. And you forget about the importance of that community outreach and that community impact. So how are you guys, impacting the community right now? I'm curious. I'd love to hear how you're doing that.
We work with Boys and Girls Club.
Mhm.
We got a small mentoring program. We're trying to get some individuals on from high school. They're in the culinary class and get them introduced to them, get them some culinary credits as well to make sure, like, hey, if you see me do it, I wanted to show that you're capable of doing it well. It may not be barbecue, but whatever industry that you choose to be in, you can be a industry leader and have a business of your own. It's just a matter of making the necessary sacrifices to put yourself in a position to be successful. So by doing that, I'm doing it through my work. I'm not just telling somebody, You can be great. Yeah, go be great. I'm doing it through action. I don't want any excuse like, man, well, it's hard. Anything you really want, is gonna be hard. That's the reason why I tell people, find something you love to do. Find something you love to do for free, then charge tax. Because number one, you will put more into it than you would anything else. Anything else, you'd be like, man, I'm doing it, but I'm ready to go. If you find something you love to do, you won't even be looking up at the clock. And by that time, you'll be getting paid more than you ever anticipated, as well as putting out a far superior product that you would in any other field because you that more invested into it.
Amen. Man, you said it. I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's something I think a lot of folks that start up a business, no matter what industry, barbecue, retail, I mean, you name it, they lose sight of that, hey, you know what? This is going to take sacrifice, which is what you mentioned, which is hard work. And unfortunately, sometimes everything sounds good. I think Mike Tyson was the one who coined this phrase. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes.
Everything sounds good on paper. You got a good business plan. You got great, all your social media looks really good. And then that first time you get a negative review, or that first time you get rejected, it just all, if you're not committed, like you said, invested,
Right.
like, you just crumble,
Right.
And your mindset's not strong enough.
Yeah, you gotta be locked in. You gotta be able to take constructive criticism. Like, everybody doesn't have to have the same mindset for you to be successful. You need to be challenged to a certain degree. You need to say, okay, what can I do better? Or what can I do to make myself more efficient? Or what can I do to improve the overall experience of what I'm trying to create? And no matter whatever you're trying to do, for me, it's barbecue. I'm trying to put out the best barbecue I possibly can be in this point in my career. I know this point will call growth, and then growth is painful no matter what it may be. It's right now. I know I'm to the point where it's gonna be time to move to a brick and mortar. But my brick and mortar, I have to be decisive about where I'm going to place my brick and mortar, because you just can't put it anywhere. Just like advertising, you can tell somebody you're off of the major interstate, but if they don't know if an off ramp is there, they're going to pass you by every single time.
Yep. I mean, brick and location, right? It's all about location. And again, going back to that mindset of, hey, if I love what you said, I think you said, uh, find something you love to do, and don't just charge tax.
There you go.
Because you're dead on the money.
The government want theirs now. You got to give them theirs. And I'm
That's
the type
right.
of person to make sure they got theirs, because when it come down to them asking for their tax money, I want to already have it in hand and let me go on by my business, go on work. Because I got a lot of people that's dependent on me to say, hey, I have a beautiful family tree. If I can explain you my family tree in less than 2 minutes, I could, but there's no way possible. Just having a family, having a farm in one family for a century is a story within itself. Right. But for me to be able to branch off of that family tree and create something of my own and say, hey, this is a beautiful branch, a part of that family tree, that's something I'm trying to create to say, yeah, he was able to do something to be impactful, but still be within this family.
Man, that's powerful stuff. That's great. I love it. So where did the name come from? I'm curious, because I've been sitting here wondering, how did you get the name Zilla's Pit Barbecue? Talk to me about that.
So Zilla's Pit Barbecue became because of my uncle, man. I got one of the funnest uncle. He's really funkle. He's the funnest uncle you can be around. So once he always noticed me cooking, especially being around him and dad. And once I started cooking on my own, he's like, man, let me taste your food. I see you been paying attention. Let me see what you're doing. He said, boy, you a beast on this grill, man. I'm going to have to start calling you Zilla. You big time right now. I said, nah, I'm not big time. But I want to show y'all I did pay attention. And this guy's amazing cook. He's not a chef. He's not a pitmaster, or he don't deem himself one. But when I said this guy's amazing cook, this guy's amazing. So to get that honor and to get that honor to say, hey, man, you've been paying attention, that means a lot.
That's awesome. That's right. You get that recognition, especially from somebody that you look up to and respect and admire. It means a ton. especially at a young age, whenever that was, when you're soaking that all in. So, well, what's next for Zilla's Pit Barbecue? What's next for you guys on the horizon?
So the horizon, it really comes down to location.
Mhm.
We're continuing doing, like I said before, festivals, farmers markets, creating a community base and to be prevalent in the area, let people know like, hey, we're here. But I also want to make sure that I do want to put a brick and mortar in a community that I can support. I know that people want to see me win as well and see my family win as well, but I also want to make sure that if I'm going to be in the community, I want to be able to give back. So we're hunting for a brick and mortar location at this moment, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is to be able to have one brick and mortar, one food truck, and be able to provide the people something that they'll be proud to say is they're part of their community.
I love it. It's all about community. That's some good stuff. So, how can our listeners connect with you? I know you're on Instagram at Zilla's Pit Barbecue, correct?
That is correct. So we're going to be at Instagram at Zilla's ZILLAS /B Pit PIT underscore BBQ, and you can find that on all forms of social media. That's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. You can also go onto our webpage as well at www.zillaspitbbq.com. It'll also show you what will be popped up if you go less than halfway down the page. It'll show you our locations, our times, and where we'll be located for the week and the upcoming week as well.
Well, there you go. We'll have all of that info for our listeners. We'll have all that info in the show notes, so you guys can check him out and connect with him and just see all the cool things he's doing. Love your style. Love the attitude about giving back to the community. And again, I'm grateful for your time this morning and appreciate Matt connecting us. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.